Good afternoon, friends. Today we shall start block 2, wherein we are going to discuss international HRM functional issues. This block consists of 3 units. Unit 4 talks about procurement of human resources. Unit 5 talks about development of human resources. And in Unit 6, we shall discuss about how to retain human resources, or what we call the retention management. These are the things we are going to discuss in this particular block. Hiring and placing people in positions where they can perform effectively is a goal of most organizations, whether that is a domestic organization or international organization. If a US multinational company wishes to appoint a new finance director for its Indian subsidiary, it may decide to fill the position by selecting from finance staff available in its parent for operations. We call it PCN, or it can recruit locally. We call it HCN, host company, or it can seek a suitable candidate from one of its other foreign subsidiaries, what we call a TCN. These are the three things or availabilities are there to fill that position. Recruitment is defined as searching for and obtaining potential job candidates in sufficient numbers and in sufficient quality so that the organizations can select the most appropriate people to fill its job needs. Selection, it is the process of gathering information for the purpose of evaluating and deciding who should be employed in particular jobs. Now, if we go through it, ethnocentric, these are favored by PCNs. Polycentric, HCNs can manage subsidiaries. Geocentric, ability is more important than nationality. Regiocentric, similar to geocentric, but limited to a given region. Now let's say if the company wants to expand globally, it has 4 strategic orientations. Or if we want to recruit, it has 4 strategic orientations. Number 1, ethnocentric. In this one, the key positions in the organizations are filled with the employees of the parent country. All the managerial decisions, namely vision, mission, objectives are formulated by MNCs at their headquarters, and the same is to be followed by the host company. The staff of the parent country is best over others, and also they can better represent the interests of the headquarters. So they think our country, or I can tell you, uh, our orientation is best. Therefore, the headquarters, it wants to implement, it wants to send its people. Then the second option that we have, it is called polycentric. The nationals of the host country are recruited at the managerial positions to carry out the operations of the subsidiary company. Then the third option we have, it is regiocentric. Firm accept a regional marketing policy covering a group of countries which have comparable market characteristics. Operational strategies are formulated on the basis of the entire region rather than individual countries. Then the fourth option is geocentric. A company with offices in multiple nations that operate to achieve global objectives as well as local objectives. That is how we see from the previous two. They think my company, let us say the company which has got headquartered, my position is the best position. That is what they think. From there, they are moving on to the next one. That is, wherever host country is there, there they want to recruit from that one. They proceed to the regions. For the a few regions they choose, and the last one is same. They have got the global perspective as well as local objectives, and keeping those things in mind, they try to recruit people. Or these are the four options they have. Now, we shall discuss these things a little bit in detail. Now, let's go to the ethnocentric. In ethnocentric firms, few foreign subsidiaries have any autonomy, and strategic decisions are made at headquarters. Key positions in domestic and foreign operations are held by managers from headquarters. Subsidiaries are managed by staff from the home countries. Now, what are the advantages having this ethnocentric approach? The advantages, we can put it like this: is a perceived lack of qualified host country national, therefore we will send our people. Then there is a need to maintain good communication, good coordination, good control with the corporate headquarters. When you want to have that, you go in for this ethnocentric. For the firms at the early stages of internationalization, I think 2 weeks back we were talking about the stages of internationalization. When you are in that ethnocentric approach, it can reduce the perceived high risk inherent in this novel environment. Then, when a multinational acquires a firm in another country, it may wish initially replace local managers with parent country people to ensure that the new subsidiary complies with overall corporate objectives and policies. And because local staff may not have the required level of competence. This is how an ethnocentric approach to a particular foreign market situation could be perfectly valid for a very experienced multinational. Having our own person in whom we can place a degree of trust to do the right thing can moderate the perceived high risk involved in foreign activities. With this intention, people they go in the initial stage of internationalization through this ethnocentric approach. Why? Though ethnocentric approach is good, it has certain disadvantages. That is what we need to understand. First one, it limits the promotional opportunities of people who are at host countries. This may lead to reduced productivity and increased turnover among that group. The second thing is the adaptation of expatriate managers to host countries often takes a long time, during which PCNs often make mistakes and poor decisions. When parent and host nations compensation packages are not compared, the often considerable income gap in favor of PCN may be viewed by hosts as unjustified. For many expatriates, a key overseas position means new status, authority, and an increase in standard of living. These changes may affect expatriate sensitivity to the needs and expectations of their host country subordinates, which may be quite different to the perceptions of the PCN managers. Why we are studying in detail, in the examination, they can ask you any one of these things, or they can ask you what are the orientation while recruiting people for um, host countries. At the time, you can write these things. The second approach that we have is called polycentric approach. Using a polycentric approach involves M&E, multinational enterprises, treating each subsidiary as a distinct national entity with some decision-making autonomy. Subsidiaries are usually managed by local nationals who are seldom promoted to positions at headquarters. And PCNs are rarely transferred to foreign subsidiary operations. Now, what are the advantages? If we adopt polycentric approach regarding recruitment is concerned. Now, let us discuss these things. Number one, employing HCNs eliminates language barriers. That means you are recruiting people relating to that host country. Avoid the adjustment problems of expatriate managers and their families. Removes the need for expensive cultural awareness training program. See, because all these things you have to take it up. And all these things you can avoid if you get into polycentric approach. Employment of HCN allows a multinational company to take a lower profile in sensitive political situations. Sometimes you might be starting your operations in a country where there is a little political turmoil. Under those circumstances, you may think it's not wise to send my people because they are not conversant with that new environment, and you start thinking about recruiting people from that place only, and because they are conversant in that particular area. Then the next reason is employment of HCNs is often less expensive even if a premium is paid to attract high quality local applicants. This approach gives continuity to the management of foreign subsidiaries and avoids the turnover of key managers that, by its very nature, results from ethnocentric approach. Now, what are the disadvantages having this polycentric approach? Number one, bridging the gap between HCN subsidiary managers and PCN managers at the corporate headquarters is difficult. There are language barriers, conflicting national loyalties, and a range of cultural differences. For example, personal value difference in the attitude towards business. All these things may isolate the corporate headquarters staff from the various foreign subsidiaries. The result may be that an MNE could be a federation of independent national units with nominal links to corporate headquarters. Then the next point is host country managers have limited opportunities to gain first-hand experience outside their own country, and they cannot progress beyond their senior positions in their own subsidiaries. Parent countries managers also have limited opportunities to gain overseas experience, as headquarters positions are held only by PCNs. The senior corporate management group will have limited exposure to international operations, and over time, this may constrain strategic decision making and resource allocation. The next point is, in some cases, the host government may effectively dictate that the key managerial positions are filled by its nationals only. Alternatively, the MNE may wish to be perceived as local company as part of strategy of local responsiveness. Having HCN in key visible position assists a localization strategy. From that, we are moving to the third approach. We call it a geocentric approach. With a geocentric approach, the MNE is taking a global approach to its operations, recognizing that each part, subsidiaries and headquarters, make a unique contribution with its unique competence. It is accompanied by a worldwide integrated business and nationality is less important than ability. Now, some of the advantages of having geocentric approaches are: this approach enables an MNE to develop an international executive team which assists in developing a global perspective and an internal pool of labor for deployment throughout the global organization. The second advantage is it overcomes the federation drawback which we discussed in the polycentric approach. The third advantage happens to be this approach supports cooperation and resource sharing across units. This approach is not free from certain drawbacks. These drawbacks or disadvantages are: host government want a high number of their citizens employed and may utilize immigration controls in order to increase HCN employment. If enough people and adequate skills are available or require training of HCNs over a specified period to replace foreign nationals. The second disadvantage is most countries, both advanced economies and developing economies, they require MNEs to provide extensive documentation if they wish to hire a foreign national instead of a local national. The third disadvantage is providing these documentations many times it is time consuming, expensive, at times futile. Of course, the same drawback applies to ethnocentric policy too. A related issue is the difficulty of obtaining a work permit for an accompanying spouse or partner. These are some of the disadvantages we have in the case of this geocentric approach. Then, a geocentric policy sometimes can be expensive to implement because of increased training and relocation costs. We can also understand that this approach results in another disadvantage, and that disadvantage is which is related to compensation structure with standardized international base pay, which may be higher than national levels in many countries. Large number of PCNs, TCNs, and HCNs need to be sent abroad in order to build and maintain international cadre required to support a geocentric staffing policy. To successfully To successfully implement a geocentric staffing policy requires relatively long lead times and more centralized control of the staffing process. This necessarily reduces the independence of subsidiary management in these issues, and this loss of autonomy may be resisted by subsidiaries. Now, we will go to the fourth approach, that is regiocentric approach. This approach reflects the geographic strategy and structure of the MNE like the geocentric approach. It utilizes a wider pool of managers, but in a limited way. Staff may move outside their home countries, but only within the particular geographic region. Regional managers may not be promoted to headquarters position, but enjoy a degree of regional autonomy in decision making. A few advantages are it facilitates interaction between managers transferred to regional headquarters from the subsidiaries in that region and PCNs posted to the regional headquarters. It reflects some sensitivity to local conditions since local subsidiaries are usually staffed almost totally by HINs. Some of the disadvantages in this policy, they are related to number one, it can produce federalism at the regional rather than a country basis and a constraint from MNE from developing a more global perspective. While this approach does improve career prospects at the national level, it only moves the barrier to the regional level. Talented managers may advance to jobs in regional headquarters, but less frequently to the position at the MNE headquarters. Now, we have seen four approaches in staffing, and these four approaches to staffing, in part, they reflect top management's attitudes. But it is also important to keep in mind that the nature of international business often forces adaptation upon implementation. For example, an MNE may adopt an ethnocentric approach to all its foreign operations, but at a particular host government, it may require the appointment of own citizen to the key subsidiaries positions. So, for that market, a polycentric approach needs to be implemented. That means an MNE may follow different approaches depending on the situation. The strategic importance of the foreign market, the maturity of the operations, and the degree of cultural distance between parent and host country, these are some of the things which make MNE to adopt a particular position while staffing. In some cases, as I told you, MNE may use a combination of approaches. For example, it may operate with European interests in a regiocentric manner and in Asia Pacific interests in an ethnocentric way until there is greater confidence in operating that region of the world. So let us summarize the advantages and disadvantages of using three categories of PCNs, HCNs, and TCNs. See, when you combine all these things, what are the advantages and disadvantages we can think about? Now, if we are going to have that kind of mixed approach, the advantages in the case of parent country nationals are organization control and coordination is maintained and facilitated. Promising managers are given international experience. PCNs may be the best people for the job because of special skills and experiences. Then there is assurance that the subsidiary will comply with many objectives, policies, and other things. Of course, when you adopt these things, certain disadvantages also will be there. They are relating to promotional opportunity of HCNs are limited. Adaptation to host country may take a long time. PCNs may impose an inappropriate headquarters style culture. Compensations for PCNs and HCNs, they differ, and this may create a problem also. Then we are going to talk about TCNs. The advantages are salary and benefit requirements may be lower than for PCNs. TCNs may be better informed than PCNs about the host country environment. The disadvantages, if we consider, transfers must consider possible national animosities. The host country may resent hiring of TCNs. The TCNs may not want to return to their home country after the assignment. Then we will discuss about what are the advantages and disadvantages in the case of host country nationals. Advantages: language and other barriers are eliminated. Hiring costs are reduced and no work permit is required. Continuity of management improves since HCNs can stay longer in their positions. Government policy may dictate hiring of HCNs. Morale among HCNs may improve as they see future career potential. The disadvantages: control and coordination of headquarters may be impeded. HCNs have limited career opportunity outside the subsidiary. Hiring HCNs limits opportunities for PCNs to gain foreign experience. Hiring HCNs could encourage a federation of nationals rather than global units. So we have seen uh, four approaches. What are the advantages, disadvantages? Then we said a company, instead of that, it can have a combination of these things. And again, the advantage and disadvantage we have discussed. Now, we need to discuss what are the factors that are considered while adopting this orientation or staffing choices or the orientation regarding staffing choices. All these factors, we know very well that there are four choices: ethnocentric, polycentric, regiocentric and geocentric. This one you must, by this time, you got an impression because I'm talking more about these things. By this time, you got the impression this must be very important. There are four approaches, we said, and what are the factors that influence while utilizing these approaches? The first thing that influences the context specificities. We need to consider the cultural aspects of that particular country. Suppose we are sending the people to that country, can we um, mix with them? Can we mix with them? Can we understand them? Can we acclimatize with those things? What is the culture? So these things are very important. So the cultural context. Then the institutional point of view also we will think how it has to grow and what are the various aspects which are related to that particular institution. Then the third thing in the context that we are considering is suppose to send, let's say I need to send people to, let us say, um, one of the African countries, then I have to think, will I get people there or shall I have to send people from my side? So the availability of staff in terms of what is their education level, then of course, whether we like it or not, sometimes English language plays a vital role. Uh, then those conditions, all these things we see. Then what is the type of industry? Is it the upcoming industry, or do we get people for that particular industry? Do we have people who are conversant with a particular industry? So these things we need to consider while choosing a particular approach. It's called a context specificities approach. Then the second choice or second thing we have to think, local unit specificities, how these local units need to be established, strategically how important they are they important or they need to be there, or sometimes we start our unit just to have our presence. How much control we want to have on those local units? What is the locus of decision making, how decisions are made in that particular unit? So these things you have to consider which are relating to that particular unit. Then the third one is company specificities, the local area and now the company. What is this MNC structure? What is its strategy? What is its international experience? What are the governance issues? What are the issues which are relating to corporate governance? What is the organization culture of this MNC? These things one has to think. Then we have to think about what are the IHRM practices, what are the local HRM practices, what are the international HRM practices like selection. How do you select people? On what basis you select people? How do we train? In what aspect we train? In what aspect we develop? Do we train and develop only the employee, or do we train and develop his entire family? What is the compensation package? And how are we deciding, in what terms we are deciding, in what currency we are deciding? What is this career management, career planning, career development things that we have? So all these things we need to discuss when we are going in for this global recruitment policy. So when you are choosing which option that you need to exercise, I think is that the four important aspect, and each one has got four into four things you have to consider. Now, the next thing that we need to discuss is about international human resource planning. How do you acquire talent, talent acquisition, foreign for international assignments, staffing, and other issues. I'm sorry, I did not break there for international and one or two places. I'm sorry. Now, now we shall discuss about these things. They should make decisions about where and how to carry out these HR planning activities. Where means, are they going to carry it headquarters, or are they going to do these things in the host country, or where they are doing, and are they going to have what is the approach they are going to follow? Is it a top down approach, bottom up approach, or sometimes a combination of these things, or top down or bottom up approach? We have to, which approach they are following, we have to see. Then, should these activities be done in home country? For example, should the recruitment or selection process be carried out in the home country or in the host country? Should the company externalize their HR activities? Are we going to outsource, giving all these things to outside people? Should international assignments be covered by employees from home country, or should local employees be hired? One of the activities of IHRM revolves around how to fill international vacancies or how to staff internationally. So, all these things we have to think when we are thinking about international human resource planning. Then the next thing that comes, what is this workforce planning? What is this workforce? The objective of global workforce planning is to estimate employment needs of MNE and to develop plans for meeting those needs. The term workforce, it applies to an enterprise employees. The term labor force applies to the pool of potential employees, the labor market from which a firm attracts and hires its workforce. The size and location a potential labor force from which a firm recruits employees varies according to many factors, such as the participation rate of men and women in various locations. Are we allowing women to join in the workforce? Even among men who are allowed to participate, whether only local people would be expected to apply for particular jobs, or are we encouraging people even from other areas? Then whether people with the necessary education or skills are available locally. All these things we have to think when we are contemplating about workforce planning. The labor pool from which MNE recruits staff is therefore also located in those places, speaking all those languages, expressing all the diversity of cultures, values, and behaviors, and regulated by widely varying employment laws. Enterprises that develop international operations must find staff in whatever locations they operate or relocate the staff they need if unavailably local to those locations, learn to recruit and hire in multiple locations and culture, and deploy staff where it makes most sense for the operations. Now, in the best of circumstances, the HR professionals, they are asked to provide information regarding the adequacy of labor markets before we take these decisions where to locate our global operations. In other words, before getting into global operations, HR professionals are assigned these tasks. They have to give a report regarding availability or regarding market forces, labor market forces. They have to give their report, or whether to participate in any cross border or acquisition, joint ventures, and alliances. But if not prior to such decisions, at least for such decisions are made, HR will be tasked with the ensuring the timely staffing of the newer existing international operations if those things are not there. Because of the shortage of skilled workers, the acquisition and deployment of talent are a global key imperatives. In today's global environment, successful organizations of the future will be those which can attract the best global talent and nurture, develop, and retain it by having a compelling work environment and sophisticated succession management strategies. Now, having seen about workforce, now we need to think about the availability of data. One of the major obstacles to M&E workforce planning is the lack of accurate data about labor forces in many countries, particularly in less developed and emerging economies. Ideally, data about such labor force characteristics as participation rates, percentages of men, women, and their working age, and people who look for work, the level and quality of education and literacy, availability of skill training, language skills, unemployment rate by country and metropolitan areas within the country would be available. This data would be available to help international human resource plan for their firms locally workforces. When available, these data are usually prepared by an agency of the government. Sometimes ILO and other people, they prepare this data and they make this data available. Sometimes you may want to have an independent organization to prepare this particular kind of data. But in many emerging markets, such government agencies don't always exist, or the data they provide are inadequate, inaccurate, or sometimes politically motivated. In any case, they often do not provide data which is adequate for IHRM department to be able to assess whether the people with the necessary skills are available. That means from some of this data we may not be able to get. Therefore, we have to depend on other people. And this can be developed in any particular location in the numbers necessary to staff planned or acquired operations. So therefore, we may have to depend on other people to get this particular data. Then, now the thing is, what are the reasons for these international assignments? The reasons for international assignments. Number one, position filling. This lack of available skill, peace and work abroad, and I have to fill those positions. Therefore, what I do is I will go in for international assignments. The second reason is management development. I have to train, I have to develop, I have to transfer that common corporate values. For all these purposes, we are going to have these assignments. Besides all these things, we'll have these international assignments for the purpose of organization development, namely transfer of knowledge, competence, practices, exploit global market. For that purpose, we are going to have this international assignment. Now, what are the type of assignments normally people they give? That when you are staffing, you have to think about, can we think about assignments, what were we are thinking, then uh, what are the types of assignments? You can have a short-term assignments up to 3 months. This can be extended up to 1 year, or you can have a long-term assignment which ranges between 1 to 5 years. So when you are staffing people, you have to think about these things. Then again, when we talk about the time, we will classify these people. In other words, sometimes these expatriates, they are classified in this way. Uh, they are called commuters. Go home every 1 to 2 weeks. Then rotationals, commute for a set period, followed by a break in home country. Then contractual, specific skill employees hired for 6 to 12 months on specific projects. Then virtual, employee manages international responsibilities from base in home country. So this is how we try to classify these international assignments. Now, let us try to differentiate between traditional assignments and short-term assignments. The traditional assignments, the purpose is filling positions or skill gap, management development, or organization development. And in the case of short-term assignment, it's a skill transfer, management development, or management control. Then if we see the duration, traditional assignments usually between 1 year to 3 years. And here short-term assignment, they range between 6 months to 12 months. Family position in the traditional assignments, family join the assignee abroad, and in the case of short-term assignment, assignee is unaccompanied by family. Then selection is a formal procedure to select these traditional assignments, but short-term assignment, all bureaucracy, mostly informal. The advantages of traditional assignments is good relationship with colleagues, constant monitoring. But here the advantages are flexibility, simple, and cost effective under short-term assignments. The disadvantages in the case of traditional assignments, dual career considerations we have to make. It's more expensive, it's less flexible. Whereas in the case of short-term assignments, a lot of taxation advantages will be there, disadvantages will be there, side effects will be there, like alcoholism, divorce rate, then poor relationship with local colleagues, and work permit. These are the some of the disadvantages. Now, what are the key issues surrounding international recruitment? They are relating to female managers. How do you recruit them? How do you manage them in uh, altogether a new environment? How do you uh, protect them? How do you provide safety and all these things? The second thing, certain things we have to discuss which are relating to dual career couple. Then third one relating to equal opportunity legislation. Then fourth one is expatriate failure. I will be discussing in detail about this expatriates. Then impact of the multinationals' ability to recruit and select high caliber staff. Now, when you are selecting staff for foreign assignment, what is the criteria? The first one is cross cultural suitability. It leads to cultural empathy, adaptability, diplomacy, language ability, positive attitude, emotional stability, and maturity. So, cross cultural suitability is the ability to implement technical and managerial skills and feel reasonably comfortable in a foreign environment. The second thing that we consider family adjustment. When spouse and other family members may not adjust to a foreign country. Generally, adjustment level of spouse depends on factors like generally adjustment of expatriate and the spouse own opinion of international assignment. A higher level of organizational support in the early stages of expatriation. See, many times it looks so rosy, these foreign assignments, but lot of things one has to think and lot of turmoil sometimes you have to go through. Therefore, you have to be very careful while choosing people for these assignments. Then the third thing that we talk about, country culture adjustments, hardship posting, remoteness of job location, social psychology, safety risks, professional pressures of living in repressive cultures, denial of permits to females. All these things they have to think. Then the next one is organizational requirements. Organizational staffing approaches may require sending more expatriate to work in a certain region or location because the requirement is like that. Partner organization may be involved in the selection of expatriate staff like in international joint ventures. Then language problem. Knowledge of the host country's language, critical for the ability to communicate effectively. Knowledge of the host country's language helps expatriates and their families feel more comfortable. Then technical qualities, technical and managerial competencies. Now, how do you select people? Till now, what we discussed, what is the criteria? Now we are discussing how do we select people for this multinational enterprise. Number one, we think about recruitment and selection. The HR department must make into or it should take into account that the contracting needs of MNCs are different from those of the firms which only act nationally. So you have to think about recruitment and selection. Then the second way you can recruit is performance appraisal. An international firm's performance appraisal system must take into account the competency of the employees, but it also has to consider intercultural personal skills, sensitivity towards foreign norms, values, and the capacity to adapt to new environment. So when you are selecting, you have to consider. First of all, I spoke several things about cultural suitability and all these things. Now we're discussing. Then training. The training function of the function of training for international HR departments also has greater complexity. Normally, the decisions about training and improvement are taken based on firm's degree of internationalization, to what extent you are internationalizing. See, I have shown you the different stages. Then remuneration. The design of a globally appropriate remuneration policy is one of the greatest challenges HR departments are faced with. To design and administer an appropriate remuneration policy requires a thorough knowledge of the legislation, the customs, and the employment practices of many countries. And the most important thing also you have to consider the industrial relations, they are also very important when you are recruiting people for these global assignments. So, dear friends, we have seen about, or for the we have discussed about international IHRM recruitment. What are the approaches that we have, and if we combine, what are the approaches? What are the advantages, disadvantages we have? Then uh, the cultural sensitivity and other kinds of recruitments. When you are recruiting, what are the other things that you consider? These are these are the things which we have discussed in this class. Thank you so much. We'll meet, God willing, next week.